These are the answers to the Unit 2 Topic 1 Formative Review 2 packet. This is optional and it will not be collected for a grade, but this is how you would go over these questions. So, the situation: you've had to schedule a plumber to come to your house since the water pressure in your house isn't functioning. You've scheduled an appointment to have someone come fix it, and you know the following. So we know there's a $30 charge for the repair person to come to your house. We know that the charge is $20 an hour for every hour the repair person works, and fractions of an hour will still be multiplied by this $20 charge. Finally, we know that the repair person will not stay longer than 8 hours. So they're telling us that H is the number of hours they spend working, and C of H is the total cost of fixing the water pressure. So the first question is, are H and C of H continuous or discrete? Because it says that C of H, it says in the directions, the charge is $20 an hour for every hour the repair person works, and fractions of an hour will still be multiplied by this $20 charge. It indicates to us that H and C of H are continuous. We know time is always continuous, but because the repair person can work part of an hour, and since it says that fractions of an hour are still multiplied by this $20 charge, you can have part of a cost too. Next question, find the domain and range of this function. Well, let's start with the domain. We know that the smallest value that the person can work is $0, 0 hours. And it also says that the repair person will not stay longer than 8 hours. Because it's continuous, we need to write an interval. So our domain is going to be from 0 to 8, with our variable being H and including both. If we want to write it in the other notation, it would be 0, 8 in brackets. Now, we know that our range is going to be the cost from 0 hours to 8 hours. So we need to find that. Well, we know that there's a $30 charge for the repair person to come to your house. We also know that it's $20 an hour. So this is going to be plus 20H. So we know it's 0. 30 plus 20 times 0 is going to be 30. And then we know at 30 plus 20 times 8, that's going to be 30 plus 160, which is going to be $190. So our range is going to be from 30, remember it's C of H, to 190, or 30, 190, with brackets because it's included. Finally, we're going to use this function rule, 20h plus 30, to complete the graph and the table. Let's start with the table. We know that C of 1 is going to be 20 times 1 plus 30, which is 20 plus 30, which is 50. We know C of 2.5 is 20 times 2.5, plus, let me erase that, plus 30, which is 50 plus 30, which is $80. We also know C of 8, that's 20 times 8 plus 30, which we actually already calculated up above, and that's 190. Well, now they're giving us C of H is 110, so when 110 equals 20H plus 30, what does H equal? Well, if I subtract 30 on both sides, I'm going to have 80 equals 20H. Divide by 20, I'm going to have 4 equals H. So at 4 hours, the cost is going to be $110. Well, when C of H equals 160, that's going to be 20H plus 30. 160 minus 30 is 130. And divide that by 20, and we get H equals 6.5. So we know 6.5 hours is going to be 160. So finally, I'm going to graph this. We know that we're going from 0 to 8, so my interval is probably going to be by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is going to be number of hours. We know that our C of H values are going from 30 to 190. So I'm going to go by 20s. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, 200, 220, 240. And this is going to be my total cost. Finally, I'm going to plot these points. I know at 0, it's going to be 30. At 1, it's going to be 50. At 2.5, it's going to be 80. At 4, it's going to be 110. 6.5, it's going to be 160. And at 8, it's going to be 190. And I also know that it stops there. As we answered in the first question, whether it's continuous or discrete, we determined that it was continuous because fractions of an hour are still multiplied by 20. So we're going to connect this graph, but we're not going to put an arrow at either end because it has a very specific domain. Question number 4 deals with the previous graph and asks, are there any intercepts on the graph? What are they, and how do you know they are intercepts? Well, we don't have any x-intercepts because the graph never crosses the x-axis. But it does cross the y-axis at one point, so we have a y-intercept at $30. All right, it is located at 0.30. And it is an intercept because it is where the function touches or crosses the y-axis. It's when x equals 0. So is the function increasing or decreasing? Explain how you know. The function is increasing because as you read left to right, as you read left to right, the cost, the y values, increases. As hours increase, the cost also increases. Does the graph represent a function? Give a reason for your answer. Hopefully you're saying yes, because every x value, every moment in time, let's say that, every x has only one y. Every moment in time has only one cost associated with it. So it is a function. All right, next, use the following information to answer number 7 through 9. You accidentally leave out some old food and forget to throw it away. At the time the food is left out, there are 1,000 bacteria cells on it. The number of bacteria in the food after h hours is given by the function b of h equals 1,000 times 2 to the power of h. What is b of 2? Well, b of 2 is going to be 1,000 times 2 to the power of 2. Remember, order of operations, we have to do the exponents first. So this is 1,000 times 4, which is 4,000. So b of 2 is going to be 4,000. What does b of 2 represent? Well, 2 is the number of hours, and b of 2 is the number of bacteria. So what it represents is after 2 hours, there are 4,000 bacteria cells on the food. Finally, the food will completely fall apart when the amount of bacteria reaches 64,000. At what time will this happen? I think the best way to do this is to just make a table of values. So we've got our h and we've got our b of h. We know that, I'm going to just start with 2. We know that at 2 hours we have 4,000 bacteria. So at 3 hours we have 1,000 times 2 to the third, which is 1,000 times 8, which is 8,000. At 4 hours, we have 1,000 times 2 to the fourth, which is 1,000 times 16, which is 16,000. At 5, we have 1,000 times 2 to the fifth, which is 1,000 times 32, which is 32,000. At 6, we have 1,000 times 2 to the sixth, which is 1,000 times, times 64, which is 64,000. Therefore, at what time will this happen? It will happen after 6 hours. Another way to look at this is we know b of h needs to be 64,000, and we know that the equation is 1,000 times 2 to the power of h. Well, the first thing I need to do is I want to try to get 2 to the power of h by itself, so I'm going to divide by 1,000. 64,000 divided by 1,000 is 64, and that equals 2 to the power of h. I now need to get the bases the same, so 2 to the power of 6 is 2 to the power of h, so h has to equal 6. Again, you're still going to get this answer, so either way you solve it will work. Use the 3 functions below to answer 10 through 14. Be sure how you determined your answers. Please note that it says be sure to show how you determined your answers. All right, we've got h of x equals 3 to the power of x, f of x, and g of x. And it also says note the y-axis in the graph represents f of x. So the first question is, which has the greatest value? F of 2, h of 1, or g of negative 4? Well, f of 2 is right here, so f of 2 equals 2. H of 1 is 3 to the power of 1, which is 3. And g of negative 4 is 8. So the answer would be g of negative 4, and you've shown your work. Number 11 says which is the smaller value, the y-intercept of the graph. So the y-intercept of the graph is 2, or the y-intercept of h of x. Now remember, the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So h of x is really asking h of 0, which is 3 to the 0th, which equals 1. So the smaller value is the y-intercept of h of x. Number 12 says, let a, b, and c be numbers such that f of a equals 3, h of b equals 27, and g of c equals negative 10. What is the value of a plus b plus c? The first thing we need to do is find out what is a, what is b, and what is c. So f of a equals 3 is saying when our graph here, when y equals 3, what is x? And that means f of 1 equals 3, so a equals 1. H of b equals 27, so we know h of x is 3 to the power of x, so we know h of b is 3 to the power of b, and we know that that's going to equal 27. Well, 3 to the power of b is the same thing. It has a base of 3, so 27 is the same thing as 3 to the power of 3. So we know b is going to equal 3. Finally, g of c equals negative 10. That's when y is negative 10. So in my chart, I need to find when does g of x equal negative 10. And that's right here. So c is going to equal 5. So a plus b plus c is going to be 1 plus 3 plus 5, and that equals 9. Next, which function is increasing on the interval of negative 2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 1? So we got to look at all of our functions and look between negative 2 and 1. Well, with f of x, between negative 2 and 1, we can see that our function is increasing. So we know that f of x is an appropriate answer. But I want to look at all of them because there might be more than one. For g of x, between negative 2, which is somewhere in between here, and 1, which is somewhere in between here, I'm going from 8 to 2 to negative 4. It's very clearly decreasing, so g of x will not work. It is not increasing. Finally, I need to look at h of x. Well, h of x, remember, is 3 to the power of x. So when x is negative 2, we have negative 2, negative 1, 0, and 1. 3 to the power of negative 2 is 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 9. 3 to the power of negative 1 is 1 over 3. 3 to the power of 0 is 1. 3 to the power of 1 is 3. So we can clearly see that it is increasing. So h of x is also increasing on this interval. For our last question, it's asking, what is the value of f of 2 times g of negative 4 times h of 2? So we need to find out what f of 2 is, what g of negative 4 is, and what h of 2 is. Well, looking at this graph, f of 2, which we found earlier in question 10, f of 2 is 2. G of negative 4, which we also found earlier, is going to be 8. And h of 2, that's 3 to the power of 2, which is 9. So f of 2, which is 2, times g of negative 4, which is 8, times h of 2, which is 9. It's the same thing as 16 times 9, which equals 144. So the value of f of 2 times g of negative 4 times h of 2 is 144. And that is the end of this review packet.